Welcome to the Great Loop Radio podcast, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. I'm Kim Russo. I'm the director of AGLCA. Today, we're going to be talking about making marina reservations in Michigan. And it probably seems like an unusual topic for us, but lots of loopers are in Michigan right now, cruising down Lake Michigan or even Lake Huron. And the reservation system there is kind of unique for the Great Loop. So we want to dive into that. This was kind of a member request topic. So I will be bringing in Jeremy Spell from the Michigan DNR in just a moment. First, I want to recognize and thank our Admiral sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. They are Great Loop Yacht Sales, Passage Maker Trawler Fest, Skipper Bob Publications, and Waterway Guide Media. As always, we encourage our listeners to support these businesses that support the Great Loop. And now I'd like to officially welcome Jeremy Spell. Jeremy is a Central Reservation Systems Analyst with the Michigan DNR Parks and Rec Division. So Jeremy, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you doing this because as I kind of mentioned in the intro, this was a member request topic. Lots of our boaters are in Michigan, coming down the Michigan waterways. And like anything technical, some find the system fabulous and some are looking for some tips to help them find the slips that they're looking for a little bit more easily. And as I said, it's a little bit different than a lot of other states because it does seem to be pretty consolidated through one reservation system. So kind of, tell us how many marinas can actually be booked through the Michigan DNR website?
Well, currently we have 51 marinas that are available online throughout Michigan.
Mm-hmm. And Michigan seems to be one of the only states, as I said, that's kind of centralized that. What led the state to create this kind of reservation system on the website?
Well, it's been centralized for well over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be, and I have the benefit. I started working for state parks in 1994, state parks and harbors. So I kind of experienced both worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the day, back in the 90s, we used to take our own reservations, and that is extremely cumbersome and it is very, very time intensive. And we had very limited staff, and you only have certain hours available for reservations in that type of a system. So back in the mid 90s, we switched to a centralized reservation system, and it was just strictly a call center back then, which it became more of a fair system. It's one-stop shop, and the hours were not 24/7 back then, but it was a lot more opportunity for reservations all in one spot. It just saved a lot of time for customers and for staff. It was just made sense. So the harbors moved into that realm. I believe it was right around 1999, the year 2000. We started bringing harbors onto that system. So, and it's been that way ever since. And really, it was for the customer's benefit to really centralize it, to make it efficient, and most importantly, make it fair. And that way, people who were making reservations know they've got their reservation, is paid for, and they don't have any worries about who made their reservation first. It's all fair.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit of a very quick snippet of where we came from.
Yeah.
We moved to online reservations into the mid 2000s as technology grew, and that's primarily how it's about 85 to 90% of our reservations throughout the whole system are made online now. It's just the most convenient way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most boaters find it to be convenient as well to be able to do it online any time
Sure.
of day or night that they have some time available. Are
Sure.
only the state operated harbors included, or do you also provide the service to municipal or private marinas?
Actually, not just state harbors. We do include municipal harbors, and they're
Mm-hmm.
actually the majority of the harbors that are on our system.
Mm-hmm.
And they are what we call grant and aid partners. And these are harbors that have received grant funding through the DNR. And as part of that, they gain access to the centralized reservation system. So, like I said, the majority are actually the grant and aid partners.
Gotcha. And I think maybe that's where Michigan stands out a little bit in that it seems centralized is that we don't find too many other places on the loop where there are that many marinas for one state that we can access kind of all at the same time. So I
Right.
think as people are going around the loop, they're used to calling individual marinas or, using an app to find the reservation. So they get to Michigan and it's just a little bit different. So let's kind of dive into the application. It's a website.
Sure.
There's, you can put in your dates, you can put in your harbor, and it'll show you what's available. Is that availability in real time? Meaning, if somebody cancels, is the availability immediately updated, or does, somebody have to intervene and make that show up on the site?
No, it is all live. It is all real time. So everything is instant. As soon as a cancellation happens, it's immediately available on the website and to the call center.
Mhm.
So, and that was the biggest push when we went to online reservations, is it needed to be a live system. We used to operate not live, and it was a nightmare. Back in the early days, we relied on faxes, and it was a nightmare. So early on, we pushed for the live system.
Right. So I know from my own cruising through Michigan, there are some really popular harbors that are pretty difficult to get reservations at, and trying back to look for those cancellations is certainly recommended. But what are some of the more popular, or the ones that are tend to be booked up way far in advance?
I would say, based on like transient bookings, it's going to be Charlevoix, Mackinac Island, Lexington, Grand Haven, Duncan Clinch in Traverse City, Lake St. Clair Marina, Petoskey Marina. Those are our top marinas that are probably the hardest to get into. And for the most part, I would say most of the marinas aren't going to be booking up six months in advance. And I know that you'll be asking about that booking window, but
Yeah.
those are the ones you're going to want to get on very early to try and book.
Yeah. So as a Michigander, tell us what it is about those particular harbors that attracts a lot of transients. Is it location, or is it facility, or some of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think most of it's location. I mean, obviously Mackinac Island is where a lot of people want to be. And we've got the Chicago to Mackinac race and the Port Huron to Mackinac race, and that's always a busy time. So that is a very popular destination. Same with Charlevoix and Traverse City, Grand Haven. It's mostly location, and they are fabulous facilities as well. So that's really what it boils down to.
Right. Now, and of course, also the season is comparatively short in Michigan if you're looking at that versus Florida. But so
Yep.
tell us, how far in advance can you book reservations?
Well, as I alluded to, there's a 6 month rolling window. So it's 6 months to the day of arrival that you can book out. And then once you can book that day. So if you're going to come in July 1st, you can reserve January 1st, and then you can stay for the maximum stay, whatever that maximum stay is at that particular harbor. So it's pretty far out in advance. And like I said, for the most part, in the boating world, at most of the harbors, I would say most of the bookings don't happen at the 6 month window, but at these popular ones, yeah, you're going to want to be online right at that window. And that window starts at 8 a.m. every morning, and 9 a.m. on the weekends. So that's when the window actually starts. It's not midnight, it'd be 8 a.m. So if you're January 1st, if you're booking July 1st, it'd be 8 a.m. on the dot for July 1st on January 1st.
Okay. Now, I know there's a lot of loopers out there thinking, for the looper lifestyle, that's a challenge, because in January, they're probably in Florida on their boat, and a lot can
Yep.
happen between January and July when they might be wanting to, let's say, go to Mackinac Island.
Right.
So how easy is it to change? And what I'm thinking is, if Mackinac Island is an absolute must for you on your Great Loop, if you were to book a window from July 1st to July 14th, knowing that in the end you may not stay the whole 2 weeks, but giving yourself a cushion in case you don't make it on July 1st, is there going to be a penalty if then you don't arrive till July 8th, for example?
What we try to advise any of our reservation holders is to modify the reservation as soon as you can.
Hmm.
You have to modify it at least up until the day before arrival if you don't want to lose any money. Um, and then that frees up the inventory. So if you were to say book 2 weeks, at any time between the time you book and before arrival, you decide I need to modify that, you can simply do it online. You just log into your account and go to that booking and click modify or change, and you can easily change those dates. And at this point, there is no penalty to do that.
Hmm.
You just go in and make that change.
Yeah. And you alluded to the reason, but I kind of hesitate to suggest to loopers to do that because they are
Mhm.
blocking out that inventory from another
Mhm.
looper or another transient who might want it. So it's far from ideal. And I would like to point out that if you are wanting to do Mackinac Island, there are a few harbors on the website that are in Mackinac City or St.
Mhm.
Ignace, and you can take the ferry across. So there's
Yeah.
always options.
Right, right.
And I don't encourage you to book long swaths of time if you have no intention of staying that long. But I know
Right.
loopers are considering, how am I going to know in January? What's my time frame going to be? So another thing that I have heard lots of members have success with um, is if something's been booked and booked and booked and availability is not showing on the website. I've heard some have success in calling the harbor for a same day reservation. Um, why is it that that works sometimes? Can you share where that availability is coming from?
Well, first of all, the system we have now does not allow same day bookings.
Hmm.
So if you are looking to book on the day of, we don't allow that, and so you'd have to call the harbor. But I think a lot of times what happens is people look at the weather, or like you said, they book far in advance and then they just wait until that week, and maybe they have a couple different reservations at a couple different harbors. They decide, okay, I want to go here, and then they cancel the other maybe one or two. So I think the closer you get to that day of arrival, the
Hmm.
the more cancellations start to happen. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying about holding inventory for a long period of time. There is sort of a movement to make kind of a change to a cancellation policy that discourages holding on to those reservations. And
Hmm.
we're kind of looking into what we might be able to do. We already have a model for the camping world for cancellations, and there's a penalty for holding a reservation for 6 months and then canceling. But currently, there's no penalty. So I think
Hmm.
that's why you see in the boating world a lot of cancellations happening the day before arrival, and I think that's really what's happening.
Yeah.
So,
And this may be a little bit outside of your purview, and if it is, totally fine. But we also know Michigan and are thankful for Michigan's Harbor of Refuge policy. Um, does that have something, is there a number of slips that are being kept in case there is a need under a harbor of refuge if there's a weather, front coming through? Is that possibly where some of the same day slips are coming if we know the weather's clear and what was being held for that kind of an event can be released, or is it strictly, you think, cancellations?
well, I think there's a couple reasons why we don't allow the same day, and I think the the Harbor of Refuge program I don't think really plays into that too much. However, with the municipal harbors, they may hold some of their inventory back as what we call local sale only, which is they can't be reserved online or through the call center. And maybe they're holding those for those purposes. We don't really control what our municipal partners, we don't control how they manage their facilities. So, they could be doing that. But I think for the biggest reason that I hear that harbors don't want the same day reservations is they a lot of harbors do day dockage and they use their empty slips as day dockage. So if we allowed same day reservations and somebody pulled into a slip for the day and they're a day docker, that could cause issues with having a reservation come in when there's somebody actually tied up and in town. So that's really the biggest reason why we don't allow the same day reservations.
Hmm. Gotcha. Let's take a quick break and play a message from a sponsor. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about tips and kind of the recommended way to use some of the features in the website. So we'll be back in a moment. Ahoy all loopers! Discover the Marlboro Yacht Club on the historic Hudson River. We can accommodate vessels up to 52 feet, offering premium 91 octane non-ethanol fuel, water, pump out, and dockside electric services for your convenience. Experience our top-notch clubhouse with commercial-grade kitchen, Scallywags bar, all while enjoying the sights and sounds inside and out at the Marlboro Yacht Club. Savor the breathtaking views from our terrace and pavilion with barbecue stations and fireside pit. Unwind by our swimming pool and patio for those sun-drenched days at the club. Explore the Marlboro Yacht Club at marlboroyachtclubny.org or email us at info@marlboroyachtclubny.org. See you this season. An alternative to the high cost of brokerage and the hassle and risks of buy-owner boat selling, yachtx.com makes selling your boat easy, safe, and produces better outcomes. Licensed and bonded, YachtX combines the comfort of professional advisors with the reach of multi-platform marketing and the convenience of web transaction management and escrow, so your experience is second to none. Best of all, with fees of just 1.5% or less, you save 85% or more in selling costs versus traditional brokerage. Ask them about their buyer representation rebates, YachtX Rewards referral program, and Looper discounts. Boaters come first at yachtx.com. We're back on the Great Loop Radio podcast. My guest today is Jeremy Spell. He is with the Michigan DNR Parks and Recreation Division. He is filling us in on their reservation system app, which, like all things technology, some of us get it and some of us struggle with it. I think some intuitiveness is a very personalized thing, and we see it on our own website quite a lot as well. But as I said, some members were kind of looking for tips to navigate their way through the site. So let's focus on that a little bit now. One of the things that's really, I think, unique about the Michigan DNR site for booking slips versus some of the other online options is that you can look in the app and actually pick a very specific slip, like slip number. Whereas most places you're just requesting a slip and you have no control over where in the marina that slip might be located. So in some ways that's fabulous, because if you want to slip near the bathrooms, you can look for that. If you want a slip that's close to something else, you can look for that. But it does seem to create kind of pockets of availability, meaning, a slip might be over here for one of the days I want, and then there's one over there for another day. And you may have to move the boat around day to day unless the harbor master can do something to shuffle things. But so why that unique feature that allows you to pick specific slips? And then obviously once somebody's picked a specific slip, it's pretty hard to move them out of it without checking with them. So why does it work like that?
Well, we kind of evolved that way, and where it kind of comes from is our campground model. And I hear all the time, harbors are not like campgrounds. I totally get that. But we went through this in the campground side years ago, and I was in the field working in a park at the time, and I thought this is not going to work. However, once we made the switch and everybody got used to it, I would never ever go back. Mm-hmm. And the reasons why are, it was customer driven. We constantly got requests, and this is on the harbor side too. We get requests, why can't I book that specific slip? I want this slip. Why can't I book it? Mm-hmm. So when we were slip standard, and that's what we called it, it's called slip standard. The harbor master has to do all of that. They have to manage all of that. They have to manage each day who's going where. Mm-hmm. And which means they've got to manage a board, and they are the ones assigning slips. So what happens is now they're controlling it all. And if a customer wanted a specific slip, they may have requested it, but it might not have been available. So they show up and then they're mad because they didn't get the slip they wanted. And that all falls on harbor staff. The move to slip specific takes all of that out of the equation and puts it in the customers in the customers in the driver's seat, and they can pick whatever slip they want, which I think most customers would rather do that. They'd rather be able to see exactly where they're going and know exactly what slip they're going to be in. They can choose what side to tie. They can see where they're going to be. So really, it was customer driven, and then also a harbor management feature. Really, now with the slip specific, that's all out of the harbor master's control. They don't have to worry about that. They don't have to spend all day trying to decide where to put people. They don't have to look the next 2 or 3 or 4 days out to see who's coming in and who wants this, and it's all taken care of. And so now they've got a lot more time.
Right.
And then as far as the pockets of availability, I hear that a lot, but I tend to push back on that, because with the slip specific system, those pockets are visible to our customers and it shows what's available and they can book those. Whereas in the slip standard model, it's not available to the customer to see what's available and where. It's all in the harbor master's hands. And when you're assigning slips, it's really no different than the slip specific model, because you're going to assign all these different boats into different slips with different date ranges, and you're still going to have these pockets. The difference is the harbor master is going to have to look and see how to manage those pockets versus being visible on the website for 6 months for people to actually look and see that those are booked. And what we're finding is, with these harbors that have voluntarily switched to the slip specific model before this year, we're seeing that their efficiency is a little better because customers can actually see it and they can actually book it. So, and then the biggest reason for slip specific is also just, we want to move into the future with technology. And in order to do that, the slip specific model is really the only model that'll work. And just as a couple examples, we have a feature called Notify Me. And I know you're asking about cancellations and how people are notified. Well, the campground side has a Notify Me feature. The harbor side, as of this fall, is going to have that as well. So what happens is, if a harbor has no availability for the dates you want, you click Notify Me. It signs you up for a notification list for those search criteria you've put in. And if anything opens up, you immediately get emailed that something is available, and you can go in and you can book it. So now there's no calling people. There's no list to get on. It's simply, you click that button, and if something opens up, you're told right away. And in order to do that, we needed to be in a slip specific model. The other ability that we're testing right now is self check-in. So in the off season, when there's no staff available, somebody can come in with their reservation, and if there's no staff, they can simply pull out their phone and check themselves in. We're also looking at self-registration. So if you don't have a reservation, you can pull out your phone when you get to the harbor and actually register for your slip. So those are just a couple of the highlights of where we're going with this slip specific model. So we're trying to look to the future.
Yeah, no, those will be some great new features. So if someone is interested in, let's say, a 4-night stay, and they're looking on the website and there's one slip that can be for 2 of the nights and another slip for the other 2 nights, can they book those as part of the same reservation, or do they need to go through the process twice to book 2 separate reservations?
Nope. And that's another good call out for the slip specific model. Because we have slip specific now, we can do an itinerary booking. So on the website, you can actually split your stay between 2 different slips or 3 different slips and fill your days. And you might have to move a few times, but yes, you can do that. And it's all one reservation, and it's all one reservation fee. There's no additional fees for that. So, and that was something that was new this year because we moved to that slip specific model.
Okay, well, great. Moving on to like some of the mechanics, a lot of what you find on availability is based on what you fill in about your boat, because it's certainly not going to recommend a 30-foot slip to a 45-foot boat.
Right.
Any, recommended parameters for setting up that information to make sure it's accurate and make sure that it's turning up slips? Like, we had a member who put 4.5 for their boat draft, and didn't realize the system kind of auto corrected that to 45 because it doesn't take decimal points. So she was not finding no slips anywhere because it was searching for a 45-foot depth. And your customer service line was able to walk them through that and get that all fixed. But for the people who are going, there's never any slips. I'm wondering if there's other things that have been input improperly that could be causing that kind of problem.
Well, a lot of times when I hear customers or talk to customers who are having issues, they're seeing a lot of on the website. If you once you put in your parameters and you click search, they'll see a lot of orange slips.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is either the slip is seasonal or the slip doesn't meet the parameters. So if you put in a 45-foot boat, you might see an orange slip. It's probably available, but it's only a 30-foot slip and won't accommodate your boat. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it is extremely important to actually count in your entire length. So that includes your swim platform, your dinghies that might be sticking off the back, your anchor pulpits, all of that stuff, not just what is stamped on the boat as far as the length. And we see a lot of that happen where people put in their 35, 36-foot boat, they show up and they've got an extra 6 foot of swim platform, anchor pulpit, dinghy hanging off the back, and they don't fit. So that's the first thing that I would say is when you're making your reservation, make sure you count the entirety of what you're going to take up in that space. That can be a huge problem, and harbor masters will deny you that slip if you are hanging out 6-8 feet. The other thing I would say is when you're entering your parameters, always round up to the nearest foot. So if it's 4.5 foot draft, round up to 5. And that's going to help with your finding what's going to actually fit your boat.
Mm-hmm.
The other, there's a bunch of different, reasons why you might not see the availability, but those are the main reasons.
Okay, that's really helpful. So let's say I am looking for a slip in a general area, but I'm not really particular about which harbor. So let's say I'm headed, to the Mackinac area, and Mackinac Island would be great, but Mackinac City would be great too. What's the best way to go about a search like that where you want to, see availability across an area and pick one from those?
Well,
And Mackinac City has 2 marinas, I should mention. So, if you're just
yes.
looking in Mackinac City, you're looking at 3 different marinas. So what's the best way to do that?
The best way is our system is set up in regions. So we have southern Michigan, northern lower, and UP. So it's real easy. If you know your dates, you put in your parameters, put in your boat information, and then click search, and then you're presented with a map, and you drill down per region. So if you're looking for Mackinac City, you'd click on northern Michigan, and it's going to show you all the harbors in that vicinity, along the way. If you're going to travel up Lake Huron, you might even want to check Presque Isle or Rogers City. So that's really the best way. If you do not care about the dates, then you'd want to use the calendar function. So the calendar will show you not just the dates you put in, but it will show you out into the future as well. And you can see each slip and their availability and what, you may see that, 4 days from where you thought you might want to be going boating or staying at a harbor, there's availability in a better weekend, so you've got that option to use that calendar view as well.
Okay, and that was actually my next question. So if I have my heart set that I want to go to Charlevoix,
Mhm.
and I'm willing to meander about or stay somewhere else until I can get in, I would use the calendar view then to go to Charlevoix and then look for open dates that fits my boat.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, sounds easy
And
enough.
even if you wanted, a specific slip, say your heart is set on slip number 20,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the only one you ever go use, you can actually look at that slip in particular when you drill down, and you can look at a calendar view for that, and it shows you 3 months worth. So, it really gives you really have some different tools there to really plan your visit.
Yeah, and we've mentioned the calendar view, but once you've selected a marina, and I know some of those views are there some of the time, and some of them are
Mhm.
there all the time. But I know when I got into a specific marina, I could toggle between a map view of the slips, a list of the slips, and a calendar view.
Hmm.
So how we kind of have talked about the calendar view if you're just looking for an
Hmm.
open date on a particular marina or slip, but what about the map and list view? Who are those created for? What purpose are they there to serve?
Well, the map, I think the map view is probably the most popular. I think people like to actually see what they're reserving, but when you use a mobile phone, sometimes it's pretty small, and some people would rather see a list. It's just
Hmm.
easier for them to read, and the list view is going to give you the same information. It's just it's not visual, so you're not going to see exactly where. Um, but it can be a little bit easier when you're on a small smartphone to actually go through a list versus try and look at a map and zoom in and zoom out and click a green dot. So I think it's an extra option. Some people like the map, some people would rather use the list. So we give
Gotcha.
that to them.
Perfect. We did already talk about reservations can be changed. Um, I know, like, even on some hotel stays, if I want to change my arrival date, I actually have to cancel the whole thing and rebook it. Can you change, just the dates you're staying without having to make a new reservation? Just go into the website and edit that?
Correct. Yes. You would just log into your account, and you go to your reservations, it'll list your reservations. You'd click on that reservation you want to change, and
Hmm.
there's a button you click that says change or modify. And you can change your date, so you can actually change what slip. Um, and it's pretty easy. And once you confirm all that info and process it, it, it goes through and it's live in the system.
Okay. And you mentioned a reservation fee. Can you tell us what that is, or does it vary by harbor?
The reservation fee is a standard fee, and that is part of the contract we have with our vendor. It's just it's a fee to help manage that system. It's obviously a very robust system, and
Hmm.
it's very um, I mean, it's the accounting portion of it alone is gigantic. So it's a way to kind of offset that cost to the state to manage that whole system. So
Hmm.
which is a pretty standard for most, making a reservation at most any, hotel or whatever to have some sort of reservation fee.
Yeah. And can you tell us what the fee is? How much it is?
It's either $8 if you make it online. The
Hmm.
idea is to drive people to book online.
Hmm.
So it's $8 for online, and it's $10 to call the call center.
Gotcha. And then last question for you, for anybody who is not finding it intuitive, is there a tutorial or a tips page, or where would you recommend boaters go for assistance with the reservations? Sounds like there's a call center
The,
they can use instead if they don't want to do it online.
yeah, and that's one of the biggest benefits to this reservation system is they do have a call center, and it is internal. It's not farmed out. It's actually the vendor owns the call center and manages it and maintains it. So it's a very good call center. They can take the reservations, and they can give tips and instructions on how to use the website. Um, but I find it very interesting, and it's a good idea, and I think it's worth exploring putting something on the website, maybe a link to a YouTube video of how to use the system. I think that's a great idea. It's just something I hadn't really thought of.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth exploring with the vendor.
Yeah. Well, and I said that was the last question, but I actually do have another one. I've looked at it,
Okay.
as I was preparing for this, both on my laptop PC and on my iPhone. Works very well on both, but we do have a few members who have reported not being able to get it to work on their devices. Pressing like OK or whatever, and it's not quite
Mhm.
recognizing is happening. Are there any devices it is specifically made for or not made for that it's not compatible with?
No, it's made for all devices, all browsers. We do very extensive testing.
Hmm.
The vendor does extensive testing. We do too. Um, and what I found when I'd say 99% of the customers that reach out to us that I talk to, um, they either have an outdated browser, outdated software. Um, they need to update their software on their device.
Hmm.
Or they have maybe they have a VPN running that can cause a lot of issues. So it's really hard to troubleshoot device issues because it is so dependent on your device being completely up to date and browsers being up to date. And it's like I try to explain it to customers who maybe don't understand that, it's like trying to put an Atari game into an Xbox. It's just not going to work. It's
That's a good
an old
analogy.
version. I
Right.
mean, it might be the same game, but it's an older version. It's just not going to work. So that's the first thing I would say. Anybody that has issues, verify your systems are all up to date. And 9 times out of 10, that's going to solve the issue.
All right, well, that's excellent. Jeremy Spell from Michigan DNR, thank you for joining me. I think this has been enlightening and you've shared some great tips and where to go for help if anybody is still struggling. So thanks for giving us some of your time. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And to everyone who's watched or listened this week, we'll be back next week with another episode of the Great Loop Radio podcast. Until then, safe cruising.